This video, and maybe a few more like it, are going to go over the while loop. So this is the loop it's a fundamental programming feature, and so it's essential that you understand it. It's not complicated by any means. It's really fairly simple. But let's start this. Now this environment, by the way, if I did print hello, save that, and I went over into my terminal window and I ran the command python, and this file is called while loop.py. So if I were to print python while loop, it prints hello. So this is much like the environment that you see in Replit. Mine happens to be on my machine, but it is essentially the same thing here. If I hit run here, it prints to the console, but also I can do the same thing in what they call the shell in Replit. Now, why they call it a shell, I don't know, but it's essentially the terminal in most computers, on most computers. So this is what I'm showing you here shouldn't be foreign to you. Okay, so let's start with a while loop. So the basic while loop is this: while, and then a Boolean. It needs a Boolean. While something is true, do this. Once it becomes false, and don't do it anymore. So the ultimate Boolean, I guess you could say, is while true. And then you have, notice the syntax. You have the keyword while, and then some Boolean. In our case, we're just using the primitive Boolean true. And then we have the colon. You got to have that colon. And what then begins after every colon in Python is a code block. And so you can see the indentation here. My environment automatically indents for me. Yours does too, but sometimes that feature, for whatever reason, is not working. So make sure you're over some. And if I show you, so let's take a look. Remember the if statement. The if statement is if, and then a Boolean, and then the colon to begin the code block, an indentation, and then whatever you're going to do down here. Could be all kinds of things. Okay? And I don't know why. There we go. The while loop. Same idea. While, the keyword, then some Boolean, true or false. And then the colon, and then your statements. Now, when I say true or false, it's not necessarily literally true or false. It could be true. It could be something like while 1 is less than 2, and then we do something in here, and we increment, let's say, 2 to 1, or 1 to 2, rather, and then it hits that, and we'll see that in a second. But let's just start out with true. So I go down here, and I say print in the loop. All right. Now, if I run this, I run python while loop.py. It's just going to, it's not giving you a whole bunch at once. It's actually every time that loop starts again, it prints in the loop. Well, this loop essentially runs infinite number of times. There's no end to it, practically speaking. And sometimes in some software, you actually want a loop to go infinitely. There's a number of devices, embedded devices, and so forth that run on an infinite loop. But for the most part, you don't want an infinite loop. And you can see that every once in a while, down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see something flash up to show you that it's going through the loop again. But you really don't know what's going on there, except it just keeps running that loop. So we'll hit Control-C. I hit Control, hold Control down, I hit C in the terminal, and it does a keyboard interrupt, and it stops the code. So you can see it printed out, Control-C there. So it interrupts it, and let's clear that out. Now, for the most part, you're going to have a condition in here. You're going to have some sort of condition that says, hey, when this happens, we're done with that while loop. Break out of it. And so let's just say I put in count equals 0. And I said, well, run this as long as count is less than 5. Count is less than 5, right? And you might say, oh, okay, well, when count hits 5, it'll break out. But the problem is, if I run this again, if I run that again, we're still in an infinite loop because I didn't do anything here inside the loop for count. I just said, well, it's less than 5, and it'll always be less than 5, right? It's at 0 before the loop. Nothing in this loop changes it. There's nothing in here that changes it. So we're back to where we started. So let's keyboard interrupt that, clear it out. We're going to get ready to run it again. So how do we make this thing stop when we want it to? Well, we got count equals when it's less than 5. So what we can do in here is say count plus equals 1. So that's just increment, right? We increment it by 1. This is the same as saying count equals count plus 1. And if you're more comfortable with that, fine. So, and to prove that we've broken out of the loop, besides the fact, down here, this is outside the loop. And you know it's outside the loop because this print statement is not indented with these statements inside the while loop. It's outside it. So if we run this, save it, here we go, and run this, okay, you can see in the loop, in the loop, in the loop, in the loop, in the loop 5 times. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then we're out of the loop right over here. So it did what we wanted it to. It had this Boolean while and the Boolean, and then it controls, the while loop is controlled by how we set that Boolean and the fact that we increment in this case. But that's the basics. So we'll stop right here and we'll continue with another video.